So I feel that personally, when I got out of high school, I was certainly not ready for content reading at all, not in any discipline whatsoever. I remember my first semester in college, in English 101, we had to read a ton of research papers, and I just remember going through these papers and just not understanding anything that was going on. Now, research papers are, of course, on a different level than even textbooks in college. I feel like textbooks are still worlds easier to read than research papers. But that said, even reading my first chemistry textbook seemed impossible, and I was good at chemistry, and I understood chemistry. It was just worlds different. Because of the vocabulary and the syntax of the author and kind of the organization of the book as a whole. But I remember just giving up, and honestly, I don't think I had to read another textbook until my senior year. I didn't really have to read another book. It wasn't required, and the requirements of the class didn't reinforce the textbook or reading the textbook. So I can't really connect this to a particular activity that we did the other day, but I do remember Dr. Petty mentioned to us, or actually she asked us to assess our own literacy, our own fluency, and I remember saying that I can't read very quickly. I have to look at each word. I have to understand each word, and she went on to say that that's not possible. You can read quickly. You can scan. It's part of what being a professional is. You have to be able to read at a certain accelerated pace. You just have to. And she went on to give us the suggestion of just taking an index card or a piece of paper or something and just moving it down the page at a given pace, and then trying to increase that pace. And I'm not going to lie, at first I thought that was crap. Like, I thought, you can't tell me that, I can read faster when I've been reading plenty, and, it's just not happening. Like, I seriously thought it was crap at first. Like, I know how fast I can read by now, and unfortunately, or fortunately, I guess, I was wrong. I actually have been doing that recently. I've been trying to scan, not so rigidly, not with an index card or anything, but I have been trying to just increase the pace at which I just take in the text on the page. And I'm not gonna lie, it certainly has. My reading speed has increased. So I think it is valuable to, if I can at some point, implement that in the classroom to actually try and foster a faster fluency among students. Then I will, certainly, because I feel that that activity or that strategy has actually helped me out. But I think for right now, it's certainly more important to actually prepare students for the demands of content reading. They might have to be slow at first right now, but I feel like that's something that I can more easily help them with later on. Right now, I think I need to focus on building their vocabulary and building their reading strategies to actually understand what's on the page before I can actually get them to a point where they can do all of that very quickly in their head. But again, I feel like it's something that comes as a package, and at some point you're going to have to incorporate each element of it, if not all of them at once. So I feel like this quote actually relates pretty well to me. I definitely remember whenever I was in high school, if we were doing reading out loud in class, which, remember, Brandon, you should never do, I remember thinking to myself, well, I'm just going to get through whatever words I have to read, a paragraph, 2 paragraphs, whatever, and just hope that the teacher moves on from me pretty quickly. So we did an activity in class the other day, which Katie called doing laundry, because that's what apparently the paragraph was about. I sure didn't get that at first. I guess I should have looked for more keywords to pick up on that, but I feel like this is exactly what students in our classrooms experience, is that they're just words on a page. You're trying to get through them, and you don't actually realize that there is some meaning to whatever you're reading, and there is some greater idea that the author's trying to get across to you. This quote actually reminded me of a pretty funny, albeit pretty common, instance that happened to me back when I was teaching chemistry labs in college. So we were doing an experiment to test acidity and basicity of different compounds, and one of my students was sitting outside of the lab reading the pre-lab for it, and she looks up at me and says, I don't understand, what are we looking for? Basic chemicals? Is that, what's a basic chemical? Is that just like a really simple chemical? And I laughed because obviously she was thinking, basic as being simple or fundamental or whatever, and not as, a chemical that has basic properties to it. But, it's just a word in that context she wasn't able to understand, she wasn't able to grasp. And that kind of reminded me, this quote in general just kind of reminded me of the activity we did the other day, where I think Josh was the one who was reading the poem that was supposed to be using all homophones to get across the same message that all of us had normal words and normal sentences for. And it's just, it sounds the same, looks the same, but it's just completely different if you were actually trying to read those words for what those words themselves mean, and not just for, how they sound. I don't really think it matters how experienced of a reader you are. When you have to read a paragraph from right to left, and the words themselves are completely backwards, it's going to be pretty difficult. So when Kevin tried doing that the other day and words came out at this speed, it was pretty tough to understand exactly what he was saying, and definitely our brain shut down. So yeah, obviously our comprehension went way down when he was reading that slowly, but not only that, his fluency was pretty much non-existent. He was not very fluent in reading from right to left at all, and I don't think any of us are. But nevertheless, this is pretty much how slow a lot of our kids do read. And I see that just with them reading a short paragraph on whatever, the life cycle of a star or something. They're reading at that pace, and their fluency is not. It is not there. It's not at the level that it should be, which of course affects the comprehension level of not only themselves but the people who are trying to listen to them. So I think this quote just demonstrated or characterized fluency pretty well, and I think it gives us an opportunity to really see the connection between fluency and comprehension, especially in the activity that we did in class the other day with Kevin. So obviously the activity that connects best with this from the other day is the long passage that we had to read about the two boys in their house. And we had to make notes based on what role we were playing. I was a home buyer, but I know that some people read it as a thief. And so it's one thing to be reading with a given motivation, and obviously I was willing to take notes based on that. Just that I was playing the role of a home buyer, but a lot of our kids aren't reading with any motivation at all. They really don't care about science. A lot of kids just really don't even care about school. I hear that at least once a day. We don't care about school. So definitely what this quote says is we have to initiate that motivation. We have to sustain it, and preferably internal, because internal motivation is really going to be intrinsic motivation is going to be the most long-lasting. That extrinsic motivation is going to last for one class period, 2 class periods, but I mean that's really it. If reading comprehension is defined as using one's prior knowledge, then my job is probably to first off assess the prior knowledge of my students, figure out what exactly they're bringing to the table before they start reading some sort of scientific passage. And if I don't think that their prior knowledge is adequate enough for them to start reading this passage and actually get something out of it, and that level will vary from activity to activity, then I think I'm going to need to do some sort of warm-up or some sort of introduction to get their knowledge at a certain level so that they can build onto their prior knowledge and actually make connections between what they know, what they've most recently learned, and what they're trying to get out of the passage, so they can actually comprehend it and make some meaning out of it. So definitely we have to figure out where our students are at, and then if they're not exactly where we need them to be before we let them delve into the information, then we need to make sure that they're actually at that level before they start trying to comprehend anything. If reading comprehension includes using the writer's cues from the text to infer the author's intended meaning, then my job must be to highlight for my students exactly what the author's cues are, or how the author might be implementing certain cues in order to back up his point, or to reinforce his argument, or whatever the case may be. It's really important that whenever students are trying to pick out author's cues, or actually just to evaluate an argument in general, that they use certain reading strategies to really pick out those cues and figure out why is a writer using certain words or phrases or terms or however sentence structure to make their point. And I think it's my job to use some of the scaffolding that the book talks about to kind of model these reading strategies and allow the students to pick up on them before they start trying them independently. If proficient reading requires complete and flexible knowledge of vocabulary words, then my job is to help students build a vocabulary not only within my discipline, but a general vocabulary to use and to be able to use whenever writing or whenever reading a passage. And of course, this relates back to the 5% rule that we learned in class the other day. If 5% of the words on the page are, they just completely out there to a student, they don't understand what they mean at all, then they're going to shut down. Their comprehension is going to be severely hindered. So, different ways that I might want to increase student vocabulary would be to use a variety of different, strategies and different activities to help my students actually learn the meaning of words and learn how to manipulate the words themselves. For example, if they want to talk about an acid or a base, or if they want to talk about something that's acidic or something that's basic, or if they want to talk about the acidity of something or the basicity of something, they need to be able to manipulate the words. That way when they go back and read something that has the words manipulated within the passage, then they're not going to be completely lost. They do actually know what it means. But certainly I'm going to need to implement a number of different strategies, engaging strategies, maybe some games that we talked about in class and that we got examples of in class, to actually help students get to that point where they can recognize and interpret a large variety of words. Again, not only within my discipline, but also just in general. So if you were to tell me that silent reading with comprehension is the goal, and that fluency impacts comprehension, then it's very easy to determine why you would want to strengthen proficiency with reading text aloud. The book even says that as students delve more deeply into subject areas, they need to be given an opportunity to foster their fluency. And strengthening their proficiency with reading text aloud is going to help do exactly that. Because, again, the book says, as research shows, fluency and comprehension have, strong connections to one another. So I think that, I think Katie actually pointed it out as well, but when you read something aloud, you have to actually put in pauses, and you have to change tone and the pitch of your words and everything. And you don't get that when you're reading silently, because, again, if you read as slowly as I do, then you're just looking at word after word after word after word, and you're not actually scanning like Dr. Petty suggested. So definitely it's important to pair raising comprehension with fluency, because they are connected and they can bounce off one another and benefit each other. If you're teaching one, you're essentially helping to teach the other, I think, for the most part. At least that's the way I understand it right now. First off, I apologize for the standard overlapping with the slide. I'm not sure exactly how that happened. Standard says, by the end of grade 10, read and comprehend literary nonfiction at the high end of the grades 9 through 10 text complexity band independently and proficiently. I'm not sure why that overlapped. I guess it just scrunched it together. But if students' motivation to read is dependent upon them valuing the reading task and believing they will be successful, then my job is to try to scaffold the student to a level where they're realizing that, yeah, I'm reading pretty efficiently. I'm reading very successfully, and I'm understanding exactly what I'm reading. I think that, you know, you can't always make everything, for example, in math or in chemistry, everything that they're going to read particularly exciting to them. There are certainly ways to make text more exciting to them, but given the way that at least chemistry is taught, where you're relying basically on either the textbook or whatever sources you can find, and in conjunction with a limited amount of time to plan each lesson, you can't always have that star-studded text that you're going to give the kids and they're just going to be blown away with. And again, a lot of kids just don't care in general about your subject, so I think you have to rely on them feeling successful when they read it. Have them read that passage and each person explain a certain part to their group or something. Get them to a point where they feel successful because they're understanding exactly what you're giving them, and they're able to take that and pull something from it. And certainly you'll want to make that more engaging for students, but again, don't count on them being terribly excited to do it, at least to begin with. Again, if you can pull it to a point where they're excited because they know that they're going to be able to challenge themselves and they're going to be able to actually take something that might be completely foreign to them at first and turn it into something that they own, something that they can either paraphrase or pull the main idea out of and make it their own. I know that's something that we've done recently in class, where we've asked students to take a vocabulary word, for example, isotopes, and don't look in the back of the book for the definition. Don't use the word-for-word definition that they give you in the paragraph. Take the whole paragraph as a whole and make it your own. Turn it into something that you can explain your friend if your friend is having trouble with it. Understanding what the passage says in the book. And I think if you give them that and have them be able to make it their own to some extent, then they'll be more motivated to do it because they're realizing that they're taking something that may not interest them, may not be totally explicit or totally understandable to them at first, but at least they're getting the right idea out of it.